It is my absolute honor to introduce Lizi Jackson-Barrett to you today, who will be helping us learn about recovering from the belief that it's your responsibility to look a certain way. Confidence expert Lizi Jackson-Barrett helps women build their self-belief and silence their inner doubts so they can reach their true, incredible potential in business and beyond. Lizi is a TEDx speaker and author of bestselling body confidence book, How to Feel Beautiful, as well as an experienced and sought-after coach and educator. She's fiercely focused on empowering women to stop wasting physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial energy on trying to fit into a whole load of shoulds, showing them how to redirect that energy into achieving the dreams they've buried for so long. Featured widely in the UK media, including BBC, ITV, Psychologies, and Marie Claire, Lizi struggled with a lifetime of feeling like she was never good enough before unexpectedly losing her hair at 40 and learning what it truly means to love herself exactly as she is. Please take it away, Lizi. And thank you for being here today.
Very much. Thank you, Kelly. I was thinking that's such a nice introduction. Then I remembered I wrote it, so it needs to be nice. I am just going to share my screen with you now, and then we will get started. So I want to start off by just saying how completely delighted I am to be here and to be invited to speak to this wonderful group of people. And I also just want to say a really big thank you to those of you who have already connected with me, those of you who have kind of investigated me, Googled me, sent me a message and made that connection already. It's been really, really lovely to start hearing some of your stories, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better. So I'm going to start with an introduction to who I am and why I'm going to be speaking to you with a talk that's called You Can Stop Now. So I am Lizi Jackson-Barrett, confidence expert. And as Kelly said, I have been featured widely across the media, sharing my story and my confidence building advice. The work I do as a confidence expert comes into really three main areas of work. So the first one is that I am a speaker. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a TEDx speaker. The second is that I am the author of, as Kelly said, best-selling body confidence book, How to Feel Beautiful, and I'll be telling you more about that a bit later. And above all else, really, I am a coach. I'm a qualified coach, and I specialize in helping women to build the personal confidence that we all need in order to be able to really thrive in our businesses, in our careers, in our families, and in any area of life that we want to be showing up in with vigor and excitement, and knowing that we are capable of achieving really, really incredible things. So that's who I am. But I'm going to take us back a step, a big step, to talk to you about who I was. And I'm going back to my childhood here. So I was born in 1977, and as you can probably see from these photos, very much a child of the 80s. As you can probably also see from these photos, I wasn't one of the cool kids, but despite being a bit shy, maybe a bit geeky, a little bit awkward sometimes, I was pretty happy growing up. I had a fairly normal childhood with loving parents, and I would say my childhood was a happy one. But then when I was 11 years old, there I am again, something happened that changed me permanently. And here in the UK, we start secondary school when we're 11. So we go through primary school up until that age. And then at 11, we start secondary school, which takes us up until the age of 16 or 18. So this is my first year in kind of, the big school world. And I was in a science lesson. And in this lesson, we had been studying worms. We'd been keeping worms kind of in a tank. We'd been observing them, seeing what they like to eat, how they burrow in the earth. I really enjoyed it. And so one day, the teacher walked into the lesson. He was a man with grey hair and a grey suit, very stern looking. And he asked who wanted to feed the worms that lesson. Now, this was the kind of responsibility that actually really meant a lot to me. So my hand went up really fast, and without missing a beat, here's what he said to me. "No, Lizzie, you might scare them. We'd better let someone pretty do it. Come on, Katie, up you come." Katie was the kind of girl that all the girls wanted to be and all the boys wanted to be with. And Katie stood up and sauntered to the front of the class with her long ponytail swishing behind her as the class erupted in laughter at the unkind words the teacher had said to me. And trying to kind of save face and retain some dignity, I tried to join in with the laughter, but inside, I still remember the feeling of shame that came with what had just happened. And that moment was the start of me realizing that my worth could be measured by my appearance, and that my appearance wasn't good enough. That lesson triggered for me the all-consuming belief that acceptance and happiness depended on me changing how I looked. And as I grew up, I continued to see myself in increasingly negative terms. The kinds of words I would use to describe myself, either out loud or subconsciously, were almost completely negative. Of course, it was all started by that teacher, but it was reinforced by countless messages, sometimes overtly and directly unkind, sometimes just the same messages from society and the media that every woman gets bombarded with. But for me, they hit hard. And I became fixated on the idea that that acceptance, that happiness, that self-worth that felt so out of reach would come from changing my appearance. Now, that's not to say I did anything drastic. I didn't have plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery. I didn't do anything hugely dramatic to try to change my appearance. I did it in the usual ways. I tried to straighten my hair and whiten my teeth and experiment with makeup and study magazines like my life depended on it to try to get myself to look as close to what I saw as the beautiful women as I possibly could. But of course, most of us don't look like those women, and most of us aren't going to look like those women without going under the surgeon's knife. And for a lot of us, we realize that. But for me, my view of the way I looked had been so tainted by that experience in that science lesson that it was a belief that I held so true, so close to my heart, that I couldn't see any other truth beyond that one. And so how that played out in my life went beyond kind of just, and I say just in inverted commas, but beyond just being unhappy, because that real sense that I really wasn't worth much looking the way I did meant that I was an intense people pleaser, because I knew nobody was going to kind of see me because of how I looked. And so I needed to try and make them like me. I needed to say yes to everyone all the time to try to gain that acceptance that I felt was out of reach. And of course, that then spiraled into finding myself into a series of emotionally abusive relationships. I was perpetually comparing myself to other women, and of course, finding myself lacking every time. In my work at the time, I was a teacher, a secondary school teacher, and I was badly bullied by the woman who managed me. And again, I see that I was attracting all of these really negative relationships into my life because that's what I thought I was worth. My dreams, my ambitions, my potential, they were all meaningless. They weren't anything I ever gave myself permission to explore. And this lasted for 30 years. And it all started with that comment that was made to me at 11 years old by a teacher who should have known better. And then I turned 40 in 2017. And while I was getting ready for this birthday dinner that you can see in front of you, something awful happened. I found my first bald patch. It was above my right ear and about the size of an egg. And while I was getting ready, I suddenly discovered this hairless patch on my head. I was in an instant panic. It was the most frightening thing to find. I didn't know what it meant, what it was going to mean, but I was getting ready for this birthday dinner with my girlfriends. So I pulled my hair back into a ponytail so that I could take my front bits of hair and pull them over the bald bit and hide it. And I went for dinner and I put a smile on my face and I didn't say anything to any of them. But it wasn't something I could keep quiet for long, because over the next 2 months, I lost all my hair. Every time I brushed it, I would have handfuls of hair left in my brush or in the palm of my hand. And day by day, the change that was happening on my head, I was charting with these photos that broke my heart, that I sent to friends to say, look what's happening to me. This is completely out of control. Until in December 2017, 2 months after I found that first bald patch, my husband shaved off those last remaining strands of hair from my head. Now, I would say this photo that you can see here was taken much later, when I had learned to be happy with the way that I looked. At the time, I didn't feel like that at all. And it was more like this. It was hiding under hats. This photo, and I have to say, I don't remember taking this photo, and I don't remember why I took it. But I do know that I was sitting in the waiting room waiting to see a dermatologist to try to find a way to save the last bits of hair, to make it grow back, hiding under this hat with mascara under my eyes from crying so much. And yet, as you can see, here I am on your screen right now, talking to you happily, actually not even thinking about the fact that there's not a hair on my head. And so I went from this picture you can see in front of you to this, feeling happy about it, laughing about it, able to joke about having no hair. And I want to share with you the moment that this happened, the moment that things changed for me after my hair falling out. And I'm going to do it in a way that I haven't done before when I've given a talk, which is that I'd like to share with you an extract from my book. So I'm going to briefly stop sharing my screen while I read to you, and then I will share again. So my book is called How to Feel Beautiful, and it's a book that shares a lot of my story around what happened when I lost my hair. And it also takes the reader through her own journey of body confidence and finding happiness in your own skin. And the extract I want to read to you is from chapter 2. And the chapter has the same name as this talk that I'm giving you today. It's called You Can Stop Now. One night in mid-December, after my husband had lovingly shaved off the last remaining hairs on my head, I lay in bed in the dark. My husband slept deeply next to me, and I stared at the ceiling, the tears running down my cheeks and pooling around my ears, soaking my pillow. I was crying for all those wasted years. I was crying with the realization I'd have to give up on the dream that one day, if I just tried hard enough, I might be able to be beautiful. I was crying for the energy I had poured into trying to look beautiful, and I was crying that it had all been for nothing. And then a thought formed. You can stop now. It was a strangely thrilling thought. I had no idea what I would find to occupy that energy if I didn't spend it trying to change. And I had no idea if it was possible to learn to love myself exactly as I was. But in that moment, I knew that it was what I wanted to do. 30 years of believing I couldn't be beautiful, of believing I wasn't good enough, that I needed to change, that I was too ugly to feed the worms, had been exhausting. And now I was giving myself permission to stop. The truth is, I had no choice. My sudden alopecia and the way it changed my appearance so quickly meant I had to stop on my endless mission to look like the swishy-haired girls. I had to stop trying to be something I wasn't, and I had to learn to see myself with new eyes. I had no choice, but you do. You can choose to stop trying to look fundamentally different from how you already are. You can choose to stop believing that you're not good enough. You can choose to stop telling yourself that your life will be better if you change how you look. You can stop now. I'm going to say that again because it's going to take a while for it to sink in for you. You can stop now. For years, decades even, you've bought into the narrative that as a woman, the most important thing you can do is look pretty. You've resigned yourself to the idea that your body exists to please others, and that the most important responsibility in your life is to be visually appealing. You've invested innumerable hours, immeasurable energy, and inestimable money in trying to look different so that other people can relax when they look at you. You have exhausted yourself trying to look the way you think you're supposed to look. But you can stop now. You compare yourself to other women. You compare yourself to the women who seem to have it all together, the women whose husbands appear to dote on them, the women whose children are always in clean and ironed clothes, the women who are taller and thinner than you, the women who walk effortlessly in heels, the women with manicured nails and fluttery eyelashes and swishy hair. You compare yourself to every kind of woman and you find yourself lacking. But you can stop now. It's become ingrained in you to reject compliments. It's a pattern that's become so entrenched that you barely even recognize them as compliments. Instead, you've formed a solid armor against them, so positive comments bounce off you like arrows. Compliments embarrass you because you can't believe them yourself, and it's hard to imagine they were given sincerely, so you brush them aside or turn them into a joke. But you can stop now. You have spent your life feeling about your body the way you've been told you're supposed to feel about your body. You live in a world where women are expected to feel ashamed of every stretch mark, any loose skin, everything that wobbles. You're meant to despise boobs that are too small and boobs that are too big, teeth with gaps and thighs without them. You're in a society that tells you you're supposed to feel deficient and lacking, and that you're meant to resent any part of you that doesn't match up to the arbitrary set of standards called beauty. You've been programmed to feel negatively towards every imperfect part of your beautiful self, without ever stopping to examine how you really, truly feel about your body. But you can stop now. You don't need to feel bad you've spent your life doing all these things. We all do them. It's part of being human and being a woman and living in the society that we live in. It's part of living in the appearance-obsessed, selfie-saturated 21st century. You haven't let yourself down by spending all those years trying to look different and believing your appearance is a disappointment to everyone. But you know what? You can stop now. It's time to be done with that. Now you can think about loving yourself the way you are without having to change anything. And all that time and energy and money you were putting into trying to look different can now be used for other things. Things that truly make you happy and fulfilled. Things that nurture your soul. Things that make your heart sing. Things that make it unnecessary to compare yourself to other women because you know you are enough in every way. Things that make you proud of your physical, emotional, and spiritual being. Things that make you confident in everything that makes you who you are. And now you can start. And I feel I must just apologize for the background noise because my beautiful cat has decided that was the moment to come in and chase her toy mouse around the floor with lots of jingling of bells. So I do apologize for the cat noise in the background. So that extract from my book, the reason I decided to just read that to you is because obviously I spent a long time finding the right words, and I wanted to share with you what happened to me to change from this utter overwhelming belief, this fixation on changing my appearance, to being happy in my own skin the way I am. And so, having laid in bed that night with this epiphany that changed everything for me, the following morning, I looked in the mirror and I saw myself properly for the first time. And I realized that I liked it. I realized I had been crying about losing my hair because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I realized I'd never stopped to look in the mirror and say, what do I look like with no hair? And I was amazed. I looked good. Being bald suited me. So I gave myself some courage by adding some filters to a photo, which isn't something I always advocate, but I always think that the things that we need to do in the moment are absolutely fine. So the photo you're looking at now, you can see it's filtered, but this was the first bald photo I ever put on Facebook. And so I give my past self permission to do this because it was one of the scariest things I ever did. But I wanted to take control, and I wanted to write a caption that would avoid people feeling sorry for me. So I wrote, putting on my foundation last night, I came across a problem. I don't know where my face ends anymore. And this was the moment that I really took control and said, do you know what? Hey, world, I don't look like those women that I've spent my life thinking I needed to. And I'm okay with that. Now, this was a really scary and difficult thing to share that photo for the first time. But each time I shared a photo, it got easier until it got to the point where it didn't even occur to me to pause before clicking post, to even think about the fact that I don't look like a lot of other women, because this is just me. And what I didn't realize while I was going through this process of becoming more and more confident, sharing these photos of myself, I didn't realize I was creating a system for getting out of your own comfort zone and building confidence. And it's a system anyone can use. I took some time to reflect because I really wondered, how had I gone from being terrified of being seen to showing up proudly and happily? So I want to share this system with you now because actually anyone can apply it to any area of life that you feel you want more confidence in, or where you feel you are constricted by staying in a comfort zone where everything outside of that comfort zone scares you. So retrospectively, I've created this visual of what my comfort zone looked like in relation to my hair loss just a few months after it fell out. So my comfort zone was small. I was comfortable pretty much being bald at home, letting my husband and my kids see me. I was reasonably comfortable when I joined a Facebook group for other alopecia sufferers, but there wasn't much that I was okay with. Then what I did subconsciously was start to think about what I would do if I had more confidence. The stuff I wished that I was brave enough to do. I wished I was brave enough to go shopping with no wig on, to call myself beautiful, to enjoy what we'll call grown-up time with my husband again. And so what I did was I chose one thing that was outside my comfort zone. In this case, it was posting a bald picture on Facebook. And once I'd chosen this thing I was going to do that scared me, I did it by finding as much courage as I could. And that courage can come from all different places. As I said, for me, that courage partly came from putting a filter on my picture. It might come from asking people for their support. It might come from somebody else doing the same scary thing at the same time as you. There's lots of ways to boost your courage. And then I did it. And then, as you know, I did it again. And the next time I still needed courage, but I needed a bit less. And then I did it again and needed a bit less courage still, until eventually it took no courage at all to share my picture on Facebook. So what happened was my comfort zone expanded. And the thing that was once outside my comfort zone was now firmly in it. And what then happened was that I was able to repeat the process with all of those other things that had been outside my comfort zone, until bit by bit it grew bigger and bigger. And so actually, when people say to me that I have a lot of confidence to show up with no hair, for example, in some ways I don't see it as confidence, because I'm comfortable doing it. And that's how I developed what I call my confidence growth system. It's 4 steps that start with that comfort zone at the top. And then you move on to finding the courage to do the thing that scares you. Once you have done that a few times, again and again, and that's the important part, by the way, we don't only do it once, otherwise we run straight back to our comfort zone. We do that thing that scares us again and again, until at some point we reach a stage that I call competence, which means realizing you're fine, realizing that you can do it and it didn't need to feel so scary in the first place. And very soon after competence comes confidence. And we all know what that feeling of confidence is like. Finally, that confidence leads back to the comfort zone, which is now bigger and has expanded to include the thing that once scared us. In practice, how I use this with my clients and how you can use it and how it can apply to any situation. So I had a client who said to me that she really wished she had the confidence to join a gym and get fit, but it felt scary to her. And so we defined her comfort zone, the things she was happy to do at that moment. Then we defined what was outside her comfort zone, the things that she would do if she was more confident, feeling a bit braver. Then she chose one thing that she was going to do. We worked on ways to find courage, ways that she would be able to feel brave enough to do it. And then she did it, and she did it again until she realized she was competent. And then she felt more confident. And finally, her comfort zone had grown to include the thing that once scared her. So it's a process that can be applied again and again. So if I go back to my own story of coming out of my comfort zone, the really exciting part is that it doesn't have to stop there, because of course there are always going to be things that sit just outside our comfort zone, right? So now I had this bigger comfort zone, I was able to think bigger. Well, now what would I do if I had more confidence? And there were all these new things that came up for me, linked no hair, that when I was still in that tiny comfort zone right at the beginning, I never would have been able to picture myself doing. Sharing my story in the media, speaking at big events, writing a book. And surprise, surprise, I did those things too in exactly the same way. And when you use this system, you will find that there are things that are so far out your comfort zone, you can't even imagine them. But as your comfort zone grows, you start to see how they are within your reach. Your opportunities are infinite. Now, before I finish, I just want to share with you that when I was first approached by the wonderful people of the She Recovers Foundation, and I was asked to come and speak, I did pause before I said yes, for a very specific reason, that I have never looked at my story through a recovery lens before. I've told my story many, many times, but was it a story of recovery? Well, I realized it absolutely is. I recovered from damaging beliefs that really held me back in so many different ways. I recovered from the obsession I had with comparing myself negatively with other women. I recovered from feeling like I'd never be happy because I'd never look the way I thought I should. And actually now I'm happy because I'll never look the way I had thought I should. And my recovery story hasn't only made my own life better. For example, it's had an incredibly positive effect on my twins, who are coming up to 13 years old and who sadly used to sometimes speak really negatively about themselves, like so many kids do. But I've been able to show them that there's more than one way to be beautiful. They've been able to watch me go through this transformation and come out the other side of it, short, fat, and bald, and feeling great about myself. And what it means is I'm seeing them speaking more kindly about themselves too. My recovery has actually helped them to recover from those beliefs that they were starting to absorb themselves. And beyond my own family, actually, I have been lucky enough to impact countless other women through my book, through my speaking, and actually above all else through my coaching, which focuses entirely around confidence and confidence building. Receiving testimonials like this one that I'm sharing with you on the screen reminds me all the time that my recovery journey, which I am now absolutely owning, it wasn't only for me. I didn't know at the time, but I know now that all of those things that I experienced and that journey that I went on, I was doing it for so many more people than just myself. So that brings me to the end of my story, because this was an event that I spoke at a few months ago, and I've realized this photo, this is what recovery looks like, right? This is me, center stage, all eyes on me, and feeling great about it, feeling amazing, in fact, in that particular moment on that stage at this exciting event. I was so happy that so many people were looking at me. And that, for me, this picture is the pinnacle of my recovery journey. So that brings me to the end of my story. If my story and my work has resonated with you and you would like to talk to me about working with me, please do reach out. Now, I've probably timed doing this talk kind of a bit wrong, because my website isn't currently operational. It's under a rebuild. At the end of February, my new website will be available. But you can still obviously connect with me through Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Lizi Jackson-Barrett. And you can email me, lizzie@lizijacksonbarrett.com. And so if you are, like I was, currently feeling limited by some deep set beliefs that are squashing your confidence, let me show you what's possible. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions and having a conversation with you now.
Thank you so much, Lizi. That was amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you. I'm just looking through our questions here. Let's see what we have. I just learned so much. I was taking my own notes. So that's just great. And I know so many other people have related to it as well, just scrolling through the comments on Facebook and everything. So here's one question that popped up from someone in the webinar. Am I insensitive to wonder if the hair I hate makes me want to shave my head? Seriously, should I see if I feel better? I am lucky I can regrow it. I know, I just feel I don't need it and I am tired of it. Tired of hair falling out and looking ugly and turning gray. Should I try it?
Thank you so much for sharing how you feel about your hair and the question that you're currently thinking about. I'm going to say that I'm not going to tell you whether or not to shave your head, because if you hate it, I don't want you to come back and tell me. But I have to say, what made me smile looking at this comment is where you said, I just feel I don't need it. And I have to say, since losing my hair, I suddenly feel like hair's a bit silly. It's a bit ridiculous. Why do we spend so much time worrying about it? And I have to say that I always hated my hair. It was thick and frizzy and it never did what I wanted it to do. And it always felt like a bit of a burden, I guess. And so for me, not having this hair that would never do what I thought I needed it to do, it has been really freeing for me. And that's part of what's been really positive for me. So only you know whether or not it's kind of the right thing to happen, right thing to do. As you say, you can regrow it. It's not going to be forever if it's a decision you make and you regret it. But I think it's worth us just kind of all exploring really what these messages are that we have about our bodies, about the way we should look. And if you feel that hair doesn't feel important to you, it doesn't feel like something that you need to be worrying about, thinking about, then it feels like, you know what you want to do. So I'm not going to commit either way to saying yes or no, but I am going to say that, life without hair for me has been freeing. It's been liberating. And if my hair all grew back next month, I would shave it off on a weekly basis.
That's amazing. That's amazing to know how you feel about your hair now and before, and if it were to come back. And I think what I'm hearing in that answer, and as well as the question, is we should examine where those beliefs are coming from that we feel about certain aspects of our appearance, whether it's hair or our clothes or anything else on our bodies, and why we feel the way we do about it. So for sure, that's gotten me to think about it.
And actually, just to come back to it, I just realized at the beginning of that question said, am I insensitive to be wondering this? And the short answer to that is no. Me having lost my hair kind of without that being my choice, and other people losing their hair without that being their choice and not feeling good about it, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to ask yourself questions about how you want to show up in the world and how you feel about yourself. So that bit I can answer very definitively. It is not insensitive. You are absolutely entitled to be asking yourself questions, and including the difficult questions.
Yes, agreed. Okay, here's another question that popped up. What role does society play in these deep-seated beliefs we hold about our appearance?
And I think society is entirely responsible. And I think actually it's a really hard thing to separate out, because when I shared with you that moment when I made myself look in the mirror and said, what do I really think about how I look? It's very, very hard to remove the messages that we've absorbed because it's what society has told us. It's very hard for us to have any kind of real impartiality when we look in the mirror, and to imagine how we might feel about that reflection had we not been subject to a lifetime of media bombardment and societal norms and expectations. And so I think society, the media, everything else that comes with living in the time that we live in the society that we live in, it's entirely responsible for the way we feel about ourselves, the expectations we put on ourselves. And I think it's impossible to completely filter those out. But what we can do is be more aware of them. And so when I looked in the mirror and said to myself, what do I actually think about having no hair? Of course, that is still kind of coloured by those messages that I've grown up with. But when I tried very hard to block those out and to ask myself how much of my response about my hair loss comes from what I think I'm supposed to feel, from the a response that I think I'm supposed to give, and how much of it is real and comes from my heart. So impossible to separate them out. But the short answer to your question is society is to blame for all of it.
Yes, I 100% agree. And when I critically think about looking at myself in the mirror, for example, in my experience, I just had a baby a year ago. He turned 1 last week. And I've been struggling just internally with my body is completely different from what it was before. Just the way it feels, the way it looks, everything. And when I think about why do I feel that way? Why am I feeling this way? And why am I feeling so sad about it and everything? It's because of the way society perceives pregnant women and postpartum women and what they think their body should look like. That's 100% where it comes from. So yes, thank you for that. Okay, so let's see. Our next question is, could you reflect on the misogyny around accepting men versus women without hair?
Clearly, I can only speak from my experience as a woman. I can tell you that my dad also has no hair, having lost his hair to alopecia in his early 20s. And it profoundly affected him. And he's now in his early 70s. And it still really upsets him. If he was offered some kind of magic treatment that would make his hair grow back tomorrow, he would take it. He has made much less peace with his hair loss than I have. And in the groups that I'm in, the Facebook group for alopecia sufferers, there are often conversations where men feel in some ways it's harder because they're not supposed to be as devastated and heartbroken as women are when we go through it. And so I think it's a double-edged sword. I think in some ways, clearly it's harder for women because we are dealing with those societal norms about what a woman should look like. And people know, if you choose to not wear a wig and you choose to go out the way I do, people are going to look at you and notice you everywhere you go. As a man with no hair, probably not so much. So in some ways, it's easier as a man, but I am very, very aware that for men who find it hard, like my dad always has, it's not easy because he was expected to just get on with it, to not be heartbroken at losing his beautiful hair. He had beautiful long curls and he loved them and they meant a lot to him, and he lost those curls and he would have them back in a heartbeat. So I think I always try to be wary of just kind of casually saying, well, it's easier for men because they're not expected to worry about these things.
Yes, that's a great reflection on how it can be different for sure in both ways. All right, so our next question is, my insecurities and issues lie more in my weight than anything. I want nothing more than to be comfortable in my body. Where do I start? I already ordered your book in the last hour. It's a start.
That's definitely a start, if I say so myself. I mean, I also have a weight story alongside the hair loss story. And like so many women that I know, I spent so many decades on a perpetual diet. And what I would say is, a few months prior to losing my hair in 2017, I reached the thinnest I'd ever been because I was getting married. And so this is what we do, right? When we're getting married, we go on a diet. And I lost a lot of weight. And I know that kind of in the UK, we use stone a lot, and I don't know how it translates to kg, but I lost 5 stone. And I went from a UK size 22 to a size 12. It was a big, big change. When it was my wedding day, I was the thinnest I had ever been. And I can tell you categorically that I am now back to a size 20 and happier in my own skin than I was on my wedding day. And so whilst I know that for a lot of women, losing weight can bring confidence and self-esteem, that's not always the case. And actually it is possible to learn to love yourself exactly the way you are without buying into all of this stuff around, I've just got to lose some weight first. It's hard. It's a hard journey. And it's one that is ongoing. And I think it's also important for you to know that feeling happy in your own skin doesn't mean you have to reach a point where you love every single bit. There are bits of me, I'd love to kind of reduce my wobbly tummy that I've got as a result of having twins. I mean, that would be great. That doesn't mean that I don't love myself and I don't feel happy and confident in my own skin. And I think there can be kind of a danger in thinking the end aim is to love every single part of me, because actually I don't think any of us do. And then that leaves you thinking, well, I'm still not there and I'm still not there. Once you can kind of accept, I don't have to love each individual bit as long as I love the whole. That's kind of the starting point. This is obviously a much bigger conversation around accepting and loving your body that clearly, I don't have time to answer fully now, but please do, clearly you're going to read my book, but please do reach out to me and we can have a longer conversation about that.
Wonderful. Okay, so our next question is, I struggle with comparing myself to other women. How can we stop comparing ourselves to other women on similar journeys as ours?
It's one of the most harmful things that we all do to ourselves. For me, and there's a few things I think that have helped me with that, but for me, one of the things that helped me most was realizing that we all do it. That every woman, so I go to a lot of business networking meetings, and one of my favorite networking groups that I go to is an all-woman one. And I ended up being the coach for quite a lot of women in that room. And I discovered from those conversations that sitting in that room, every single woman was looking around, worrying that everyone else was doing it better than her. They were looking better. They were more professional. They knew what they were doing, without having a clue that the woman across the room was looking at her thinking the same thing. And it struck me as kind of just ridiculous that we're doing this. The woman who we look at and envy or compare ourselves against, she's not looking at us going, well, look at me, I'm better than her. She's looking at the next woman, comparing herself negatively to her. And so I think when we realize that's going on, that's a really good starting point that helps us. I think the other thing that helps a lot is when you actively seek out women who you can connect with, who resonate with you, who represent some part of you, maybe some part of you that you feel a bit insecure with. So for me, connecting with other bald women really helped me to stop comparing myself with all the women with beautiful hair, because I was kind of normalizing my own experience, my own appearance. So I had one client who had a really hard time with her skin. She had problems with her skin, and she suffered with acne, and she really, really felt like she was the only person and constantly compared herself, until she went looking on Google for lots of pictures of women who have the same sort of skin as her. And she immediately started to feel better, because she was able to continue comparing herself in a way, but realizing that the comparison was, oh, look, I'm a bit like her. So when we're comparing ourselves and only see the differences, that's when we're being tough on ourselves. When we can compare ourselves and see the similarities, that's when we are normalizing our own bodies and our own appearance, and it helps us immeasurably.
Yes, I so agree. And I think that's one thing we do as a community of women in recovery is we find similar people on our journeys, whatever journeys that might be, whether it's recovering from substances, recovering from body image, whatever, anxiety, depression. We often know that people find our community and feel like so alone in whatever journey they're on. And then they see someone in our community, oh, I've been through the same thing. I've also felt that way. And so we normalize those feelings, and it's so important to anyone on any type of recovery journey. So it's amazing. That's so similar to stop comparing. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So our next question is, I love this concept of expanding our comfort zone. What's one thing that you can recommend to our community that we could get started on today?
So I think that the big question to ask yourself is, what would I do if I was more confident? And just see what comes up for you. And you might want to focus that to a specific area, maybe thinking about, I don't know, studying, traveling, working, relationships, or you might want to keep it just a broad question. what would I do if I was more confident? And when these things come up that really form that outer circle outside of your comfort zone, that's when you can start putting that process into place where you pick one. And actually, when we pick one, what I didn't really go into is how you pick one. But really, you start thinking about what difference would it make to me if I was confident doing that thing? What would that bring to my life? And that's what helps you to choose the one that you know you want to work on. Only ever pick one at a time. When you start trying to do 5 of them at once, it's too much. So I think the one thing to do after this session, ask yourself that question: what would I do if I was more confident? See what comes up and choose one that you think, actually, that is going to make a real difference to me.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful question and so simple. And I think this is resonating with so many of us, but also might feel a little overwhelming. Like, we want to do all the things and we want to expand, but keeping it back to the simple point of just asking ourselves one question will open us up so much more. So I think that's wonderful.
I think going back to the person earlier who was asking about how to come to terms with feeling like, you know, her body is maybe bigger than society would expect. That's a great question there. A great starting point for feeling comfortable in your own skin. What would I do? What would I do if I was comfortable in my own skin? And that's a really good starting point for that one.
I totally agree. Awesome. Okay, I think we just have like some, not questions, just wonderful comments that I'm going to read some of on our Facebook Live that you might not have seen yet. Absolutely amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your courage and your story. This story is certainly going to help many people. I feel so lucky to have listened. Wow, this is talking to me. Thank you for sharing your story. Amazing. Yes, I just wanted to share those messages with you because we so appreciate you being here today and sharing this. It feels like, and as you can see, has resonated with so many. I think that we got to all the questions that I've seen. So that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up for today?
Just how utterly delighted I've been to be invited into this group, because as a speaker, I do get invited to speak to lots of groups, but I have never had so many participants reach out to me in advance of even hearing me speak, just because the subject resonates with you, because you've had a look at something that I'm about and you think, actually, I want to speak to this person. And so you have a really special community here, and you should be really proud of what you have all together, because it's clearly a place where people feel safe and nurtured. And it's been a real honor to be here and join you. So thank you.
Wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. That's definitely what it feels like to all of us, as I'm speaking as a member of this community as well. And I'm so happy people have been reaching out to you and getting what they need from you. And I loved this session today. Thank you so much, Lizi, for your time, for your heart, for your story and your experience. And thank you to everyone who makes this series possible. Most importantly, our attendees for showing up today, holding space and bringing forward your questions and your experiences. We truly are stronger together. So next Monday, we have author, coach, and therapist Veronica Valley, who will be helping us learn about emotional sobriety. To learn more about Mental Health Monday and all of our upcoming sessions, please visit sherecovers.org/Mental Health Mondays. For more information about She Recovers Foundation and all of our recovery-focused programs, resources, and touch points, please visit sherecovers.org.